I can do those trainings on site, which a lot of people find more beneficial to have it, and I'll do a entire day of training. If you get me talking, I'll just keep talking. So even at that mastermind this weekend, I got there. I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? You can talk about this. Well, how long do I got? Because I'm used to getting like 45 minutes to an hour. Like, can you fill up 3 hours? I'm like, hell yeah. Absolutely. So I did 2 days in a row, 3 hours. In 2 days, I was talking for 6 hours straight.
Yeah,
And I,
me
because
and you have a
it,
similarity there for sure.
it's something, especially when it's something that I'm passionate about. And, I love sharing knowledge. And
What's up, guys? This is Blake from Top Dog Digital. I know it's been a little while. Excited to have a really good guest for you guys here today, and really someone who has a ton of knowledge in the junk removal industry. As you guys know, we love to talk junk removal here. And when I met Kevin at the Junk Expo, it was a no-brainer to have him on. So, Kevin, if you can, introduce yourself a little to the audience.
hey, team, how you doing? I am Kevin Hess. I'm with the junkevolution.com. A lot of you may know me previously. I worked for over 10 and a half years with 1-800 Got Junk.
Yeah, so a ton of industry knowledge, not just in the past but current, right? You're able to
Right.
take things that you learned from Got Junk, and your experiences there, and also a lot of things that you're seeing now because you're currently running a junk removal company part-time as well.
Correct.
Perfect. So you just came from a great mastermind in San Diego, which
Yeah, that was awesome.
I've heard a little bit about. I'm working with Sean from the Wrecking Hall, and I talked to him the
Yeah.
other day. We were talking a little bit about it. So if you can, man, let's start with that and talk a little bit about that mastermind. I know you had the chance to speak to some of the guys and talk about a little bit of how that event went.
Well, I mean, that was a really cool thing because I've been to several different conferences over the years, and different masterminds, but this one was kind of cool. It was in San Diego, California, which was great to get away from the cold here in Georgia for a few days. But they rented out this big $2 million house, and they decided to have the mastermind there because they wanted to make it more like a retreat. You know, we had meetings out in the backyard, at the bar, with a big TV while people were sitting in the pool in the hot tub, and learning it. So they're relaxing and being educated at the same time. So it was a cool situation.
Yeah, I'd love to see more of those type of setups. I think retreats are really popular in the marketing space. I was in a couple
Yeah.
different coaching programs, and retreats were a big thing. And I think there's so much that you can gain from that, not just like in that setting of like you mentioned, I mean, kind of being relaxed and in a learning environment, but also outside of when the learning environment is happening, right? Being able to connect with people one on one and really get to know them, get to know their business. And I'm sure a lot of people not only learn from you and the, kind of the event, but also learned a lot from the people who were there for the same reasons as them.
Yeah,
Uh,
and the really cool thing about it was the people that were actually there, these are people that are, just being around them, you can tell they're still hungry. They're ready to learn. They've been in the business for a few years. Some of them, from 300,000 up to a couple $1 million businesses, but they were all hungry. And that's what a lot of people don't understand is that hunger and desire to learn more is what helps you succeed. These people all realize that what got them here is not going to get them here, so that's why they were there to continue learning. And the conversation about business was nonstop from the time you got up eating breakfast to the time everybody was going, settling. And I sat there for hours late into the night just talking, giving advice and listening to other people, and it was a cool situation.
yeah, absolutely, man. So that kind of brings me to the junk evolution, right? I mean, we talk about, understand, learning and, giving value and just basically, everything that you're building over there. So let's talk about a little bit about the junk evolution because I think you're running something pretty special and that more people really need to look into, and that's coming from somebody who is, working one-on-one with a lot of people in the junk removal industry and seeing, I don't want to necessarily say holes because holes sounds like a really bad thing, but areas of
Right.
opportunity is probably the best way to explain it.
Yeah.
So talk a little bit about the junk evolution, because I know this is something that a lot of people watching should have some interest in.
Yeah. Well, going into this, I I noticed two things. There's business coaches out there with big businesses that, but they focus mostly on the business aspect um, of junk removal, and then you have the lower end, which is the influencers who go after the new guy and just sell them some chat GPT regurgitated knowledge, and putting it out there as and selling courses. This is the new trend is selling courses and everything else. The junk evolution is basically everything else in between. This is something that people that don't really talk about these things because everybody is focused on either the startup, the business aspect of it, or the marketing aspect of it, which is why you're here, that you handle that. So I wanted to get into the meat and potatoes of it and everything in between, whether it be people and culture, leadership, all the things that help scale a business. That's why I have trainings for the on-site experience. That's what I started off with, and helping people when they get on site and actually selling and closing jobs at a high level, building relations with the customers instead of just being straight transactional. From there I went and started operations management training, because a lot of people, I heard a lot of questions about how to get off the truck, what's the next, how to get to the next level. I talked to a lot of people who are having that issue where their just business kind of plateaued because they couldn't get off the truck because they didn't trust anybody on their team to actually do as well as they do. So I saw a need for that, so I created the operations management training, which I've had so many years of operations management as an operations manager myself, plus developing a lot of really great operations managers. So I saw the need for that training. And then I also did a leadership training for specifically for junk removal pros. And from there, I also have a lot of different people and culture programs as well. Candidate screening, which I saw some, it seemed like there was a big need for that. One-on-one development with truck team members. Um, leadership workshops for truck teams, not just owners and managers and such. um, Performance check-ins, checking in with the businesses performance KPIs and helping them you know evolve from that. Even evaluating team meetings that they hold, different things like that for their people and culture. And then I do different type of mentorship programs, coaching. I have a lot of document and forms that you can use within the junk removal, uh, you know, whether it be different type of contracts, different type of scripts, what have you. Um, as well as I have a pro tips blog that has, like, right now it's over 70 pro tip blogs. And I usually create them by listening to the junk removal community. Everything that I create is because I see the need for it, because I hear them asking the questions. When I hear the questions, I answer them. And that's where I answer them at. And I've created all this to, help everybody in the junk removal community, whether you're just starting out all the way up to the multi seven figure guy.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on something that I know a lot of, and it's that person who's stuck on the truck,
Yeah.
right? A lot of guys, and sometimes it's not even when they're looking to scale, we'll have a position where we're marketing and they have the ability to scale, but it's not necessarily the workload, it's the ability to really take somebody that you trust. I got someone locally, and he told me, he tried to go that route, and a few weeks in, the guy wrecked the truck, and all of a sudden he got $10,000 in repairs. He's like, I'm scared to ever do this again, right? And I'm thinking, man, me too. I would be too. And that was my experience, right? So I totally understand that fear, and it's a really tough spot to be in, right? Because if you don't get off, then you are kind of plateaued to a
Yeah.
degree, right? You're going to be the
Yeah.
bottleneck forever, and you know what I mean, like until you're able to overcome that. So when it comes to your program, for those who aren't familiar with it, you kind of talked about there's a lot of things I think that you know bring to the table. What does that look like? Like what kind of setup is that? Is that something that you know is on site? Is it something that, or is it a mix? It sounds like probably a mix, but on site for some people, and then others is it just kind of documentation and you know what I mean, kind of things that you've built that they get access to.
Right. Well, I try not to make it as simple as just documentation. Like a lot of my all my trainings have like um video narrated video templates that's narrated along with workbooks, playbooks, and everything that goes along with it for the actual training part. But I also do it in person. I traveled to different places like Albany, New York, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Washington, a couple places here in Georgia. And I can do those trainings on site, which a lot of people find more beneficial to have it. And I'll do an entire day of training. If you get me talking, I'll just keep talking. So even at that mastermind this weekend, I got there. I'm like, what do you want me to talk about? You can talk about this. Well, how long do I got? Because I'm used to getting like 45 minutes to an hour. Like, can you fill up 3 hours? I'm like, hell yeah. Absolutely. So I did 2 days in a row, 3 hours. In 2 days, I was talking for 6 hours straight.
Yeah,
And I, because
me and you have a
it's,
similarity there for sure.
it's something, especially when it's something that I'm passionate about. And, I love sharing knowledge and, because I've obtained so much knowledge over the years. My background is in training. So that's what I like to do. I like to teach. I like the teacher aspect of it.
For sure. Yeah, I remember when they were like 30 minutes for the expo. I'm like, how am I going to talk about all this in 30 minutes? Like, I can talk about a good bit of it, but it's like, it's one thing and then it connects to the other thing. And I'm like, if I leave this thing out, then I feel like I didn't fully complete this. So I totally get it. It's probably one of the reasons why right from the beginning, even with these interviews, I'm like, let's try and keep it 15, 20 minutes because if I go off the rails, we'll be sitting here for 2 hours. Uh,
I've been on a podcast that we ended up going almost 3 hours.
yeah.
I'm like, whoever's watching this later on, I apologize, but
Yeah. Well, for the sake of the ones watching, we'll try and stick to the rules here, to the best of our ability. But yeah, and I figured the same thing when it comes to like what you said with the on-site. I feel like that would be the most valuable at the end of the day. Like, yeah, you know, you can get certain tools, but I think if you really have somebody, you know, like yourself who's able to like really see their situation and be there and really help them kind of navigate, because everybody's situation is going to be unique. Granted, like your expertise, you'll be able to uncover their unique situation. But I'm sure it's not just a copy and paste, and I know that just from, you know, what I've seen. There's similarities, but everybody has a little bit of a unique situation. Um, so, you know, for those that don't know, you've wrote, you know, you're an author, which
yeah.
I am stepping into that realm. I'm almost finished my book as well. I know how much work goes into that. At least I realized the hard way. Trying to run businesses and write a book, oh my goodness, is a
Yeah.
lot.
Oh yeah.
So t talk a little bit about that, man. That's a really
Yeah,
cool thing.
I've actually written 3 books already. So, the first one was Leading with Purpose, and that one is about, inspiring growth, culture, and building a visionary team. When I first came out with that book and I posted it on all the junk removal groups, I had a question. The first question I got was, what does this have to do with junk removal? I mean, the easy answer is, well, everything, if you're that point. But then, I really started really thinking about that because this is everything that I utilize with 1-800 Got Junk. With 1-800 Got Junk, we were the number one high ranked franchise in the entire system with 175 plus franchises. So everything about that was what the leadership that I brought to the table, and that's what I have in that book. But I really took that question and put a lot of thought into it. And when I googled leadership, and then I hit the images, and the first thing I saw was people in shirt and ties sitting in a desk, sitting in a boardroom, conference room, whatever. Is very corporate. And I think that's the problem is, in the junk removal industry, this is a blue collar industry. So when you hear leadership, you're like, nah, that's not for us. When it really can be. So that's why I wrote my second book called Leading with Grit, purpose driven leadership for a blue collar world. So that one I really, really, thought that would hit home a lot better because, there was, I just, people in blue collar industries don't think about leadership, not knowing that it could really help scale their business.
Yeah,
So,
for
and
sure.
then,
That's a
then
good
the
point.
third book, yeah. And the third book is, it's funny because, you mentioned Xavier earlier and he's writing a book. He's written a couple books, but his main one, he's been spending a lot of time, a few years writing this, and he had asked me if I could write a chapter in it. And he told me, he's like, okay, but I want it to be real. I want it to be raw. I want it to be, fifth grade reading level, no BS, just really, really raw and just really give it to him. And I wrote it, and it was the best thing I've ever written because, I've been a writer since I was a kid, so I really enjoy writing, but this felt right the way I did it. So, and it reminded me of a time, a few years ago. I had met this guy, Aaron Hosack. He actually used to play for the Minnesota Vikings. Yeah, I think he was a wide receiver, and he had in a conversation with him, he had, I was having issues with the business. I was doing some things really well, some things I was having issues with. So he gave me what he called a gut check. And that gut check was just finding out, what am I not doing in the business that I need to do, that I know I need to do to move the needle. And, it really helped me look in the mirror and dig deep inside on what I need to do and stop BSing myself about it and stop giving excuses. I thought about that and how raw that was, and that writing that for Xavier reminded me of that. And I was already writing another book, and when I finished that and I thought about that, I went in my computer and hit delete. I deleted, I had already written like 4 or 5 chapters, and I hit delete, and I started all over, and I wrote a new book called The Gut Check. It's basically, stop, face the leader in the mirror and stop hiding behind your excuses. It's the no BS wake up call. Your no BS wake up call starts now. So that one I really, really enjoyed writing. And I talked a little bit about that at the Junk Expo. I just kind of went to an exercise on that. And I actually did an exercise that at that mastermind over the last weekend as well. And everybody took a deep look in the mirror, and hopefully they're implementing the things that they know they need to and weren't. So I helped them look in the mirror and figure out what that was.
Well, definitely, if you haven't grabbed that book, I would 100% say that you need to, because I can tell just, I don't care where you're at in your business. I think, and again, coming from the author background, similar, not nearly as far as you are. I'm very early in my stages. This is book one about entrepreneurship. So different audience. Well, not necessarily, but you know what I mean. But
Yeah.
one of the things I wrote about there was mindset and how important
Hmm.
it's going to be if you want to take that leap. So, I think myself, anyone who's an entrepreneur and, has become a business owner, we need to remind ourselves a lot of times of a lot of those things that I guarantee that you have in that book that we tend to forget,
Yeah.
right? We get kind of
Yeah.
in the day to day and get lost in the shuffle a little bit. So,
Yeah.
um,
And they also get lost in the excuses. That's the
yes.
big thing. That's what
Yeah.
any entrepreneur, they're, if they're not doing what they need to do, and well, I'm too busy doing this, I'm too busy doing that, or I had to do this instead, those are all excuses.
Yeah.
And that's what that book helps you focus on.
Well, I would definitely suggest that. And also, talking about everything that you've got going on with Junk Evolution, I truly believe in it. I really do. I think I've been around this space long enough that when I talk with somebody, I can tell they're genuine. And I 100% got that from you, amongst other people. And my biggest thing right now, especially in this space, is that we have a lot of things going on that aren't as genuine. Um,
Mhm.
and that worries me to a degree because I think while those things aren't as genuine, they sell really well. They appeal really well, which means that they're easier to fall for. And when I look at your kind of everything that you do, you don't sell with shiny stuff. You talk about who you are and what you provide. And, I want people to really understand what that is and what impact that can make. And I thought that was why it was really important to have you on here because I believe in impact it can make.
Yeah,
Um,
just like with a junk removal customer, everything that I offer, I want to have value to
yep.
them.
Yep.
and that to me is important, is the value that I can provide everybody and anybody. You guys hear me talk about leadership a lot. And, that leadership aspect is what helped me scale our 1-800 Got Junk franchise. Leaving 1-800 Got Junk, I had a crew of 50 plus guys there, and as a leader, just because I left there doesn't mean I have to stop being a leader, because that leadership is giving me purpose in my life. So if I can't be a leader of a team of 50 guys, then I want to be a leader in the entire industry and helping provide value, helping other people succeed. And that to me is what leadership is. So if I can't do it with my own team, then I'm going to do it with this team. That's why you always hear me every time I'm on a podcast or talking to somebody, I start off with "Hey team," because everybody in the junk removal industry is part of my team now.
I love it. To wrap up, I think that's a good segue at the end. We talk about Got Junk and the experience you had there. Um, Obviously a very valuable experience. What's one thing that you think you've taken away the most from that experience that you apply today?
Um, you know, it took me many, many years of failing to really learn how to succeed, but in order to do that, I had to learn how to fail forward. Any systems and processes that I put into place, any trainings I did, that just weren't working, I realized that I have to evolve. Even if it was working, and then as we start scaling, I mentioned before, what got you here is not going to get you here. So you have to continue evolving your business, and that means systems processing or processes, training and development of your people, because your people is the most important thing. And that's why a lot of my website is focused on developing the people on your team, because that's what's going to help your business scale.
I love it, Kevin. This has been great. Thank you so much for being on here.
Yeah.
Guys, in the description, I'm gonna plug Kevin like everything that he has. So please, like, feel free to hop in there. I would say Kevin all three books because I think all three of them have, an aspect that really everybody could use and take things from. Obviously, the junk evolution, and anything else that you might want to put in there, I'll have in there for the description for everybody so they could take advantage of it and really get to know Kevin Hess. If you don't already, you should. I promise if you're in this industry, there's value that Kevin can provide to you. And that's why I had him on this channel. So thank you once again, Kevin. As we wrap, is there anything that you got coming up here that you want to talk about? Any events coming down the road or anything like that? Or maybe a new book?
No, getting a little too busy to, write books. I got to where I wanted to be. I'm sure there's an idea will pop into my head sooner or later that I think so. Because like I said, you know, the things that I bring to the table are the things that I see are need for. So if I see a need to write another book for something, trust me, you'll get one.
Sounds great. Well, trust me, I know how much work that is. I learned myself here over the last few months. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm sure we'll have you back on here in the future.
All right. Thanks, Blake.